What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Sales Performance Improvement Radio. I'm your host, Terry Hansen. It's great to be back with you once again. Today, I want to chat with you a little bit about how to get close to the sales problems in your organization and avoid two critical mistakes that might be happening right now. Stick with me. All right. So I ran into a situation or circumstance a couple of years ago when I was running my sales consulting and sales training company before it was acquired in 2020. And I wanted to share a quick story with you to illustrate really two critical mistakes that a lot of sales managers make and a couple of vital lessons to learn. So I remember a couple of years ago, there was a digital marketing agency that approached me and they wanted some help. They wanted some training. And so as I started asking questions to learn a little bit more about what were some of the key challenges and frustrations that they were running into, the sales manager said, well, it's just the team is having a really hard time closing sales. And as I probed and asked some more questions and learned, he kind of gave me he basically mentioned that the team was having a hard time overcoming some objections. And that's really what he understood kind of the problem was and the reason why that they weren't closing sales. And as I probed some more, he also mentioned that the team had a little bit of trouble building the value of their overall offerings and the services that they provided. There just wasn't enough motivation, and he felt like if the sales team could build more value around what was being offered, that they would close sales quicker, better, easier. So the time came for me to put together a training. So we started off with a training focused on overcoming sales objections. So we went through several workshops over the course of a week or two and really hit a couple of key concepts home and really felt good that the sales team had gained some new knowledge and insights and that sort of thing. And so we kind of let that ride for a little while as typical, after you do a training program, you want to see how well it's working. So we let that ride for a week or two or three and then recheck sales numbers. And I asked the sales manager, I said, so how has it been over the last couple of weeks since the training? And he's like, well, we haven't really seen any improvement in sales at all. It's still kind of the same. And I asked questions. I mean, is the team applying a lot of the principles that we talked about? And he said, yes. And okay. And so, well, maybe that wasn't quite it. And so we put together a training program focused on helping the sales team learn how to create more value or build the value around their service offering. And so we spent a week or two or three really focusing on that and different angles and different approaches and different things. The training was really, really well done and well received. And the team really got a lot out of it. And so naturally, we kind of let another week or two or three or four go by to see how that resulted and if the number of closed deals would lift. And after a couple of weeks, I circled back to the sales manager and I said, so tell me, how have sales been over the last couple of weeks? And he's like, well, I mean, there's maybe been a little uptick, but really not much. It's kind of stayed flat and kind of stayed the same, maybe just a little improvement. And I kind of scratched my head and I was like, okay, we're absolutely missing the ball here. We're way off kilter and we're just not hitting the nail on the head. So I asked him a couple more questions. I said, so when it comes to, the fact that your sales team is not closing the number of sales that you want, have you taken a look at the CRM data? Have you looked at some of the sales reports to see where the bottleneck is in the sales pipeline? And he's like, well, no, I haven't looked at it in quite a long time. And I said, okay, when is the last time you actually sat down and listened to your salespeople sell and kind of watch them as they go through the sales process or just observe and watch them? And he's like, well, no, I haven't done that in a long time. I typically do that, try to do that about once a quarter or so. And I skipped last quarter and I haven't done that in a couple of months. And I said, okay, so let's actually do that. So I worked with him, did some executive coaching and worked with him. And he sent me a lot of the CRM sales data, and we looked, and what it turned out to be is the number of leads that were being generated, the number of proposals that was that were being sent were quite high, quite good, but there was a sharp drop off after the number of proposals and bids and estimates being sent out to the number of deals that were being closed. So that's where the gap was. That's where the bottleneck was, right there. And I said, okay, so they're getting tons of leads. They're sending out tons of proposals, but there's a sharp decline there. Why is it that they're not closing as many proposals as they can? We've got a bottleneck there. Let's spend the week actually observing and listening in and seeing what they're doing. I also encouraged him to interview his salespeople about their habits and patterns. Turns out, after the dust all settled and after he had reviewed the data and did some observations and listened in and did some interviews with his sales team, he learned that the salespeople had fallen into the habit of having good qualified conversations with their sales prospects, sending out good sales proposals, but then basically just waiting for the prospect to then contact them to tell them whether or not the deal was closed or not. The salespeople were really not taking any extra efforts to follow up or more proactively schedule a follow-up meeting to review the bid or proposal together and then close the sale right then and there. They weren't taking that extra step. And so through our additional investigation, identified that there was a habit or a pattern in the sales process that they were just simply not doing. And so that's where the gap was. Now, that is not necessarily a training problem. Once we identified what the actual real problem was, it became very clear that sales manager simply was not close enough to the problem to really understand what needed to be solved and fixed. And the whole thing really brought up, ironed two key principles in my mind. Number one is I made my living as a sales trainer for 15 plus years. I love sales training. I'm a firm believer in it, but I'm also keenly aware that sales training in and of itself, by itself, is typically not a silver bullet solution to all sales performance problems. And so many managers, so many executives, so many directors contact me and ask for training programs for their sales teams. And truthfully, only about 25% of those requests actually legitimately need training, some sort of educational program. The other 75, frankly, need some sort of program or improvement effort that has nothing to do with education or training or knowledge at all. It has to do with other things that we can cover at a later time. But so that was the first key lesson: is sales training does not solve all performance problems and issues. So if your sales team's struggling to generate more leads or book more appointments or get out more proposals or close more deals or that sort of thing, just recognize that sales training may not be the thing that's actually going to help in the long run. So that was lesson number one. Lesson number two that really hit home was this sales manager, when he approached me and asked for help with training, he really didn't know what the root cause of the problem was. He hadn't done enough due diligence to really be close enough to the problem. He just wasn't close enough to the source of the problem to even know what to fix at the end of the day. He was dealing with symptoms of problems and not the real cause. So again, the second lesson is if you don't know the cause of the problem, you'll fail every time at trying to solve it. So I shared this experience really to illustrate those two kind of key lessons learned, but also share with you a little bit of a hierarchy. If you want to get closer to some of the sales problems that you might be noticing in your salespeople or your sales team, then do three simple things, maybe four things, depending on the size of your sales team. But step number one is take deep and close looks at your CRM sales data. Take a good look at your sales reports and your pipeline data. How many leads, how many appointments and conversations, how many proposals and bids, how many closed deals, etc. You've got to take a look at that and see where the bottlenecks are and where things are dropping off. So without good, clean, and clear and accurate sales data to look at, you really won't know where in the sales process the problem is. So again, if sales are not happening to the volume and degree that you want, you have to know where in the sales process things are getting bogged down. And so without a good CRM, without good sales data, without good numbers and metrics, you won't know where to point your finger. So step number one really is take a look at the existing data. In academic worlds, they call it extant data. But look at the sales reports, look at the data, review that, and pinpoint where in the sales process the problem really is. So that's step number one. Step number two comes, depending on the size of your sales team, will kind of drive and determine which of these two kind of paths you might take. If you've got a large sales team, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 100 salespeople that report to you, whatever the case might be, then you're definitely going to want to employ surveys at this point in time. So if you've got a big sales team, then you'll want to create a simple survey, 3, 4, 5, 6 questions that kind of go to the heart and soul of where that bottleneck is right there in the sales pipeline and the sales process, and start asking some questions about how the salespeople are dealing with that. And try to gather a volume of data from your large sales team to kind of uncover what's going on there. Okay. Now, if you happen to have a small sales team, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 salespeople, a relatively small sales team, then you can probably skip the survey. You don't really maybe need to worry about that. And you can go straight to observations. You can just simply listen to recorded phone calls. You can watch them sell, and you can see what their routines and habits and behaviors are. That's really what you're looking for, is what are the routines? What are the patterns? What are the trends? What are the habits and patterns that they are doing? What are their behavioral patterns? You want to see what they're doing and see what, and make some conclusions and determinations about what might be causing that bottleneck in the overall sales process right there. Okay, so if you've got a big team, you've done a survey. If you've got a small team, you've just done some observations. Then step number 3 at the end is, now it's time to conduct some interviews. You start chatting with your salespeople and you ask very specific, pointed questions about why they do what they do, how they do what they do, and when they do what they do. Try to understand the rationale and the reason, not only what they're doing, but why they're doing it that way. And in that process of interviewing them, that gives you some face-to-face and mouth-to-mouth time, if you will, over the phone to really ask some questions, drill in and clarify what's going on and how they're selling. And usually after you've looked at the data, you have surveyed and observed them, and you have interviewed them, you have gathered some really powerful information and knowledge and insights that will help you pinpoint exactly what is causing the bottleneck in sales and what the problem is. And far too many sales managers are just running around with their heads cut off like chickens and are so busy, and understandably so. It's not your fault, but so many are so busy that they just simply don't slow down long enough to take the time to look at the data, to observe and interview and survey and gather that sort of information to get really close to the sales problem, that they're kind of left shooting from the hip and guesswork. And they spend thousands, tens of thousands of dollars every single year hiring outside professionals to come in and solve the problem based on hunches and guesses and gut feels and assumptions without having the data to actually solidly back it up. So you as a sales manager have to know what the problem is and what's causing the problem. So get close to the sales problems in your team and in your organization. Take the time to observe and interview and listen to recordings and survey and look at the data. Get close to the problem and then draw some conclusions about what's causing it. And then and only then are you in a powerful position, now that you know what's going on, to then start brainstorming solutions. Is training needed? Is it better to create some tools and resources? Do they just need to have their compensation plans adjusted? Do we need to clarify expectations and give some better feedback? Or, what do we need to do? But don't just jump to training. Sales training is the end-all be-all solution to all problems, and get close to the sales problems that you're running into. So, all right, that's enough today. Hey, great to be back with you once again. I'm excited. I hope some of the things that we've talked about will really help get your brain thinking and get you thinking about how you can get closer to the sales problems with your sales team and with your salespeople, and take the opportunity this week and next to really dive in and get close to the problem so you can know and really do a good job at solving those like a champion. So great to be with you. Keep up the good work. Can't wait to be back with you next week, right back here on Sales Performance Improvement Radio. I'm Terry Hansen. We'll see you soon. Take good care. Bye.